everyone, welcome back to So Arizona. It is about that time to do another garden tour now at the end of May or early June. It may be still the end of May by the time that you see this. I'll probably try to get it edited and out this weekend, but I really wanted to catch up and show you all of the different things that are happening in the garden because there really are so many things changing at such a rapid rate. With all of these long days and warm temperatures that we've been having, it has been making everything grow so well. So let's go check out what is going on. This is the little editing fairy already popping up to give you a quick message. This is the longest video I have ever made, but that is because there are so many different things happening in the garden that I wanted to share with you. If you can't finish the video all the way through in one sitting, I have made it easy for you to save it to your watch list so that you can come back to it later and pick up where you left off. And I'm dividing it up into chapters. So the first chapter is going to be fruit, the second chapter will be flowers, the third chapter will be the vegetable garden, and then the fourth and final chapter will be all about the stock tank garden. That way you can finish it and remember where you left off. So hopefully you enjoy the update and the tour. Now let's get back to the video. So first up are the peaches. I think that if I had to only show you one fruit in my garden right now, it would be these. They are my pride and joy. They are looking so beautiful. So I am going to lift up this little mesh thing so that you can see under there. I've been stealing some of the peaches, probably one a day or so, and I've also been sharing one with my husband. So we've really been getting about 2 peaches a day. I've just been trying to leave the ones on the tree that aren't quite ripe yet, because if I pick them all at once, I think we'll have a hard time trying to eat all of them unless I want to start preserving them. But really, since I just have this one peach tree, I'm trying to savor them fresh. So one a day is perfectly fine with me. Just look at all of those beauties. Like ornaments on a Christmas tree for sure. I know I say that all the time about the pomegranates and the peaches, but I think this time it's true. And when I was lifting up this little cover right here, I saw that there was a peach that had fallen. So maybe this will be dessert for me. These are the desert gold peaches. So they're a little bit smaller than the ones that you can get in the store, but they are just the perfect level of tartness and sweetness. I would highly recommend this. These are so, so good. If I did not have this cover on this peach tree, those birds would be all over it, I'm sure, and I cannot blame them because these are so good. So I just go through every day and just see if they're ripe, and they'll feel a little bit soft and they should easily come right off the tree. If so, I'm not feeling any right now, but I've got my prize now with that windfall peach, so I am happy as a clam, and I will wait for these patiently until tomorrow. Oh, actually, I think this one's ready. Whoops. I just got 3. One fell down on the grass. I'll have to go get it, but all right, so now I've got 3 more peaches for a total of 4 today. So good. I don't know how you could be in a bad mood when you have an entire handful of homegrown peaches that are absolutely delicious. Since we're over here, I'll show you my Nanking cherries are doing really well. This is the one that came back from the winter time, and I wasn't sure if it would, but as soon as I saw it had made it through, I ordered and got 2 more in the mail. So here's this one, and then this one over here. This one was the one that I accidentally cut down when I was trimming the weeds, but it's come back. So that is really good. I had some currants here, some black currants, some consort currants, and I had 2, and they were doing so well that I ended up ordering 2 more. So I actually have 4. So I've got 1 here, and then 2 on the other side. No fruits this year. I don't expect that, but hopefully they'll get established and give me some for next year. I am not going to take this cover off the apples because it's such a pain, but can you see that little apple right there? There are probably 5 or 6 on this one that were not eaten by the hungry little squirrel, and there are a couple on one of the others. Most of the prickly pear blooms have gone, but I have been left with so many green fruits that will ripen and be delicious later. So all of these will all turn a beautiful deep purple color, And I really like prickly pear. I like making preserves out of them. They're great mixed with plum. That's a good combo. And I have just a few jars of that left from last year that I made from these prickly pear right here. So I can't wait for these to get ripe. I have 6 pomegranate trees total, and my hope is that I can make a pomegranate hedge. So if you plant them close enough, they will all kind of intermingle together and make a very private hedge, kind of like you see in England and places like that, only they're pomegranates, so they are much more desert friendly. And I had a couple that were very, very small. My Josephina was really young when I planted it a couple years ago, and I just saw it's got its very first bloom ever on it. So that is really exciting. And all of the others have blooms and fruits on them to a greater or lesser extent. There was a much bigger pomegranate tree. It's a white pomegranate that was here when I moved here, and so that is always loaded down. I think it may be a white Sonoran pomegranate, but I'm really not sure. That's just based upon how it looks. But I have a wonderful, and I've got a Granada, and I have the Josephina, and I've got a couple of others. So I really have a nice mix, and they are so yummy when they finally come ripe. If I can keep those stinking leaf-footed bugs off of them, which love to come in and suck the juice out of it. And then when they do that, they introduce a bacteria, which makes the inside of the pomegranate turn brown. So hopefully I will be on the lookout and I can catch them in the act and get rid of them. I will just dip the branch that I find them in some soapy water, and that usually does the trick. But I just love the color contrast of those kind of orangey coral blooms with the green leaves. I think it is just the prettiest color. And they start out as just these little tightly closed little red nubbins, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then they gradually open up and they almost look like they're fake, like they're plastic, but they still have some little petals attached to them. And then eventually you end up with a little baby pomegranate, which ripens and grows throughout the season. And the hummingbirds have just been all over these pomegranate blooms this year, which I think is really pretty to see. These grapes are doing really well this year. I've got 4 or 5 of these clusters on there, and this is the first year that they've produced any fruit at all. These are just a mission grape, so I'm really excited for those to come ripe so that I can try those for the first time. And this Quitobaquito Fig is by far the best performer in my garden. It withstands the heat, it withstands the cold, and it just does not care. And it has withstood the gopher too. So I feel like it needs an award just for that alone, because most of my figs have been attacked and killed by the gophers. But can you see all the little baby figs in there? Makes my mouth water just looking at those. I cannot wait. So figs will have 2 crops usually. The first one is heavier than the second, and so hopefully this is going to be a really good crop for me. And this Quitobaquito Fig is by far the best performer in my garden. It withstands the heat, it withstands the cold, and it just does not care. And it has withstood the gopher too. So I feel like it needs an award just for that alone, because most of my figs have been attacked and killed by the gophers. But can you see all the little baby figs in there? Makes my mouth water just looking at those. I cannot wait. So figs will have 2 crops. I do have some other figs. This is another Quitobaquito that I started from a cutting from the Big Mama plant right here. And then I've got a couple of little starts. This is the Oro Blanco. It froze all the way back to the ground over the winter. So this winter I'm going to do a much better job, and I think I'll bundle it up with some burlap. But it's come back really well, as you can see, I think because it had such an established root system. But I've also got some amaranth and some other figs out here. And this thing, I put it through my plant app because I wasn't for sure, just to confirm, but it is a Palmer's penstemon. And right now it's looking a bit sad and sorry because it's kind of already gone through its prime. But it had these orchid type flowers. Let me see if I can get a little closer. They were really pretty. Just swirls of branches and blooms. Blooms from the tips of the branches all the way down. And this thing is as tall as I am. I'm about 5'9", and it's just fallen over with the weight of the blooms. So I can't wait to collect seed from this. I think I'm going to be spreading this out. I've been finding these ground cherries everywhere, and I've grown these for the last few years, but not over here. I actually grew them all the way across the garden, but I've been finding them coming up all over the place, probably probably because of the birds stealing the berries and then replanting them for me ever so kindly all over the garden. So what I've been doing is when I find some that are smaller than this, a little bit smaller, like here's a great example right in here. This little guy is pretty small, you can see, compared to my hand. So I will dig around it really widely so that I don't disturb any of the roots, and then I'll take it someplace else. I'm going to show you the ground cherries that I moved over in between my pear and my plum tree because it was the perfect spot. I had some lychee tomatoes growing here last year, which are a really weird, spiky, thorny little plant that produce little berries that look a lot like tomatoes. They don't taste like tomatoes. They taste kind of tropical, very tart, but the gopher got those plants after a couple of years. So I had some empty spots. So I put some of the volunteer ground cherries over here. That way they can grow. Ground cherries get to be really big plants, so I wanted a space where they could get automatically watered with the irrigation, but also have room to spread and grow and not worry about bullying other things out. So let me show you this little spot. Under this cover right here is a kiwi vine. I replanted one that just did not make it, so this one is hardening off right now under the shade. So that's what that is. But right here in these three little spots are my ground cherries, and this one is actually pretty big at this point. It's about, I don't know, 12, 18 inches tall. If I flip it over, you can see these little lantern type things. These are a lot like tomatillos in the way they form. So at first, if I squeezed on this, it would feel pretty empty, but as the fruit develops, it's going to develop a really yummy cherry tomato sized fruit that tastes super tropical. Let me show you the flower. I think the flowers are pretty cool. Definitely look like a nightshade because that's what they are. They're a member of the nightshade family. But yeah, it's a really beautiful, healthy plant, and I've got several in each of these little spaces right here. So this is just going to be my little ground cherry corner. If you've never grown ground cherries before, they're very tart, but also a little bit sweet. They have a tropical flavor, a little bit like a pineapple, and maybe a little bit like, I don't know, like a pineapple and a grape mixed together. Although I'm not sure that's really an accurate description either. They're very unique, so it's kind of hard to describe them. If you haven't grown them and you live in the Tucson area, I would recommend them because they are very heat tolerant. They produce a lot of fruit. You can eat them fresh, or you can do jams or pies or things like that. They used to be a pretty common thing to grow in the garden, but not so much anymore outside of maybe the south. So I really love growing those. They are super drought tolerant, like I said, heat tolerant. The birds like them, so you will have to cover them or fight them for them. I like coming out and just getting a handful of them every morning, and it's just kind of fun to feel like I grew my own fruit, you know, and so that is another serving of fruit for my table that came right from my backyard that didn't take a ton of water or really any effort at all. I really haven't had any trouble with pests in the form of insects bothering them. Now the birds and the mice do like them because they have a sweet tooth and enjoy those sweet little fruits too. So you may have to put a cage around them or cover them somehow when the fruits start to get ripe. When they're ripe, they will drop to the ground and you can just pick them up, so there's no mistaking whether or not they're ripe. I've spent a lot of time over here in this very back long bed, the one that has my cattle panel trellis in it, and that is because I have been harvesting so much chamomile, taking it inside and dehydrating it so that I can use it for tea or for oil infusions later, and those are for things like soaps or lotions or oils for the skin that are really good with chamomile in them. But I really like them just for tea, and they taste 1000% better than the tea bags that you can get with a dried chamomile in it. So I just love picking these whole flowers, and you know, they're so much prettier than just having a tea bag full of dried chamomile because they just kind of unfold and rehydrate in the teacup and they look really beautiful. So I love that. They have the yummiest honey flavor. They smell a little bit like apple and honey. This is the Zloty Lan. I will put that variety on the screen for you, and that has done really well, and so far it is continuing to flourish in the heat. I spent the better part of Saturday morning on this row picking that chamomile, like I said, but also harvesting all of these dried peas. These are the Salt River Pima peas, and they are all pretty much done. They have dried on the vine. The vines have all dried up and they're turned brown now, so they're definitely ready. So I have been picking them by the bowlful every few days and then taking them inside, and then I'll just shell them whenever I get a chance. And I always save the pods because those are an excellent source of browns for your compost pile. So I will just keep a bucket outside here next to the compost pile. I'll just sprinkle a few of those in after I put my kitchen scraps in. So let's go look at my compost pile right now. I want to show you this because it's a super handy way to add browns when you don't really have a whole lot, which tends to happen in the desert. So next to my 3-bin compost system, I've got these buckets sitting here, and in these buckets are just dried bean pods that I have shelled. These bean pods were from the cowpeas that I grew last year, and I filled up all of these 5-gallon buckets as I was harvesting them, and then throughout the winter I would shell them, you know, as I was watching TV or just hanging out on the couch, and I would just shell them, but I would always make sure to have an empty bucket so I could collect all of these. And that is because I like to use those as browns, as I said. So I will add a bucket of kitchen scraps to that compost pile, and then right away I will take a few handfuls of those pea pods or bean pods or whatever they happen to be, and then I will sprinkle those in there, and it's worked really well. This is the bed that I have my green beans in on this side, and I've got some tomatoes in here. I've got my onions going down this row, but I also have my peppers, and I planted these quite a while ago, and they're doing really well. I got these seeds from the Chili Pepper Institute in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where they do a lot of the chili pepper development and breeding at UNM, but it's got some chilies on here, which is really nice. It's probably about 12 inches tall now. I started it from seed, so every little bit, about every foot, I have another chili plant. So I'm really excited about trying these this year. These are all new varieties. I'm not going to tell you what they are right now because I have to go dig up the tag and I can't remember, so I'll let you know. Right next to my chili plant is one of my red burgundy okras. He's probably 8 inches tall, and right next to a little marigold, but look at him. He's looking very nice and healthy. We're very pleased with that. A little Tohono O'odham watermelon has finally germinated here. That's nice to see. If you watched any of my previous garden tours, then you may have remembered that I planted on the far side green beans, and then tomatoes, and then peppers, beets that will be pulled out very shortly. And then also on this far edge, I planted okra with watermelon underneath. So it's really nice to see those two things germinating and growing up really healthy, because those beets are going to be gone soon and I want that space filled. If you've watched any of my previous garden tours, you may remember for this front long bed that I have green beans on one side, and then I've got tomatoes and then beets, which will clear out very soon. And then I have peppers, and then I've got some of my onions. And right along the edge of the onion row, I have planted alternating okra and watermelon, and that's so the okra can go up and the watermelon can cover the ground. And I'm hoping that it'll be a really nice combination this year. So I'm going to carefully harvest those onions here in the next week or two, and then that will give the okra and the watermelons room to sprawl, and then I won't have to worry about empty beds. I just picked a bunch of beets yesterday, so I don't want to pick any more just yet. We haven't used them all, but let me see if I can get closer. If we peek under here, we can see those are the yellow beets. And I've also got some red here. That's what these dark purple leaves belong to. They belong to some red beets in there. Let's see if we can peek. Yeah, there they are. So those are going to be pulled very soon. I have beets pretty much all the way down. So I've got onions and beets and peppers and tomatoes and then green beans. So this is really packed out bed, but it works really well as long as you keep the mature height in mind so that everybody gets all of the sun they need, and also the size of the root system. You don't want to have extensive root systems right next to each other. You want to mix shallow rooted plants with deep rooted plants so they occupy different zones of the soil and compete less for nutrients. All right, so we've talked about the bed over here with the peas and the chamomile, and we've talked about the bed on this side with the beets and the peppers and the green beans. So let's talk about this middle bed. So that is my little worm composting little pit right there. So we'll skip over that for now. But I've got all of these tomatoes all the way down in the middle, and I'm really excited about this one because these are new varieties for me this year. So this is Moon Glow, and it does have a few tomatoes on it, but they're pretty far into that foliage, so I'm not going to crawl in there. Just know that it's Moon Glow and it's new for me, and I will let you know how that goes. So I've got 2 of those. Next to those Moon Glow, I have 2 that are also a new variety called Cream Sausage. These are going to be a pale yellow, like a Roma style, but look how many are on here. Now, I have had some trouble with growing San Marzano and Roma style tomatoes out here. I think it's just the heat. They tend to get blossom and rot fairly easily when compared with others. I've tested my soil, so it's not a calcium issue. I've got them on a timer, so it's not an irrigation issue. I just think they really struggle in the heat, but these don't seem to struggle in the heat at all. The plants don't look fatigued and they are completely loaded. So this is just one side, but all along the other side, it's also really loaded with tomatoes. And this is a relatively short plant. This plant is probably just a bit over 2 feet, so definitely not as big as tomato plants can get. Next to the cream and sausage, I have another 2 tomato plants that are new varieties for me, and these are the Rosso Sicilian or Rosso Sicilian. I don't know how you pronounce that, but I'm noticing even with this heat, they are starting to set some fruit. I don't want to turn these over, but they're little tiny tomatoes. Oh, there you can see one. Little tiny tomatoes on there. These are going to be a bit pleated and round, so that'll be fun to try. I've got to collect the seeds off of these sweet peas so that I can use those to plant next year. One of my goals for this summer and fall is to collect as many seeds as I can and to kind of challenge myself with how much I can grow out of seeds that I've produced in my own garden without having to purchase any outside sources. And that's just a personal goal. Now, I will not be 100% successful at it because there are always new varieties that I want to try, hybrids that I can't produce myself. So I will always have some, but I just want to cut down a little bit on my cost. All along this side, I'm still waiting for these onions to flop over and lay down, at least some of them. Now I know not all of them will, and that is because I have gone through and snapped off a lot of the blooms, but you can see this one is being stubborn and trying to bolt. So there are a few of these that just are not going to be storable. They will never fold over and lay down probably, and that's because they've got this hard flower stalk center. So I already snapped this off a few weeks ago, but it will send up this little hollow tube, and then the flower will be attached to that. But this continues all the way down into the bulb, and it's not good eats and it's not good for storing. So some of these I will just have to harvest and eat fresh. I just noticed this red beefsteak. This one my husband brought home from me from the store. This was a seedling he purchased, but it's got its very first on here. I don't normally grow beefsteak style tomatoes just because they have a lot longer days to maturity, and that is pretty tricky in our climate because we have such a short growing season before it gets too hot for those tomato fruits to ripen. But this guy looks like he's well on his way, so maybe, fingers crossed. Also new to me is this one. You can see it on here. It's got some tomatoes on it through these onion leaves. This is called Somerset, and it's got some more tomatoes. It's got some more tomatoes over here. And Somersets are supposed to be really good for setting and ripening fruit and the heat. So I'll let you know about that one. And I've got a tropical sunset here. This is one I started from seed, and so I've got high hopes for that too. A cute little cherry. The amaranth is doing really well on the end of this bed. It's already starting to set a little bloom here. It's interesting with amaranth because you think, oh no, it's blooming too soon, it's too tiny, but they tend to start their bloom really early, and then the bloom kind of grows in proportion with the plant, and by the time the plant is big, the bloom is just as big, and it's a really beautiful combination. And don't forget to try eating amaranth leaves. The really tender young ones are really good, sauteed with a little bit of garlic and olive oil, so definitely try that. Another thing I'm trying to do this year is to grow more flowers, and around the base of this plum tree I've sown some 4 o'clocks, which are my husband's favorite. And our kids, as I mentioned, really liked them too, but they're about to open. I also let the fleabane just go because I see so many native bees on this, and so I love that. So I'm supplying them with nectar, and I think fleabane are really cute too. Plus they cover the ground, so hopefully the goal is here that these will become bushy flowers and they'll cover the ground, shade it, maintain the temperature at a more consistent level, and then also conserve some of the water. So if we go over here, you can see at the base of my pear tree, I've also got some plants. So these are actually Tithonia. These are really small ones, and then this one is a much bigger one here. I've got an amaranth back there, but these were just volunteers that I dug up carefully and moved over here. These will get pretty big. They'll probably get to be about like right here, and they'll be very bushy. They'll have tons of orange blooms, which the butterflies adore. This garlic bed, look at all of these Scabiosa blooms and all of these Orlaya. Honestly, I think the Scabiosa look much prettier when they go to seed than when they're actual flowers. So I'll be collecting some of those. But this Orlaya, all of the little pollinators have just been loving these umbel-shaped flowers so much, and I've been loving them because they are just so pretty. I love the really, really small flowers in the middle, followed by these little fan-shaped leaves along the outside. Such a pretty color combination. Here's an example of a Scabiosa. This is a really, really small one. Usually they're a little bigger, but they go from this and then they start kind of poofing out, almost like they're turning themselves inside out. And then you end up with this really lovely little seed head. And let me see if I can get one of these off. These seeds, I think, look like a little bell, or maybe like a little lady's skirt or something. Really pretty. Oh my goodness, you guys, I just noticed that the Nigella bloomed. Let me see if I can get close to this. I didn't think that it was gonna turn out this year. See if the camera can focus. Look at that beauty. I just love these so much. There are a whole bunch of them. They're all white and really lovely. This one's a really good example. I love how they have these little fronds of green just all around them that kind of surround the bloom. It just makes it so interesting. That is so pretty. Oh, and I see one that has already finished and it's gone to seed now. This is also a Nigella. Look at that. That is a really interesting plant. So doesn't this bed of garlic look so pretty? Just surrounded on one side by the Scabiosa and the Orlaya and the Nigella, and then on the other side by all of this Calendula. And a lot of this Calendula has gone to seed now, and which it will do as the weather warms. It is not really a fan of the hot weather, but you end up with these seeds that look like this, and you can just take them off, and that one's ready to save. I will probably come through and collect a lot of this, put it on a plate or something like that, and just make sure it's really good and dry before I put it in a jar. But I just save my seeds every year. I've got a lot of sunnies in here that have come up volunteer, and those are welcome guests in my garden. I love them. And I've also got some over here that I'll take you to see. Just look at these multi-branched sunflowers. I've already got some that have come and gone, and they are starting to develop some seed, so I will let them be for now. This whole patch was a volunteer, and I like that because that means that the plants planted themselves, so I didn't have to. And right now there are some sweet potatoes, a little bit of amaranth under here, but I figure that these sunflowers will need to be cut down long before the shade becomes a problem. Some of these zinnias are starting to come out. These are all volunteer, and look at what a cute little cotton candy color that is. I love that. And more cilantro that's bolted. But over here are the Bachelor's buttons. I've got some more planted throughout the garden, but they haven't started blooming yet. But aren't those just the prettiest little flowers? I love those. The bees love them too. Once they get to this stage, I will cut them off, take them inside, put them on a plate to dry so I can save the seeds for next year, for me and for other people. I don't normally film in the evening, so I am racing the sun. It is already dipping below the mountain, so I don't know if I'll get this video done tonight. I may have to continue it in the morning, but that's okay. I wanted to show you the garlic bed because the garlic is starting to really turn brown. So the rule of thumb with garlic is that if you are growing hard nut garlic, if half of the leaves are green and half are not, they're brown, then you can harvest it. And when it comes to soft neck, usually it's about 2/3 of the leaves are still green and then the lower third is brown. And then you know you can turn off the water. Don't water it anymore because you don't want to promote rot. And then once those dry for a week or two, they're usually ready to come out and then they can be cured. So when you cure them, you just put them into a sheltered location, put them on like some screen or some wire, and just let them cure and dry, and then you can trim the leaves and the roots. And that's something that I'll show you how to do once I harvest mine. But I also have some onions that are ready. They are starting to flop over, so I want to show you what that looks like when onions are ready to harvest. But you can see the garlic here looks nice and brown, and I don't think I'm going to get in there right now today. But if you really look at the bottom, let me see, let me move some of these leaves. You can see the bottoms of those garlic are really brown. So they're good to go. So as I said, I've already turned off the water to the garlic. I did that over the weekend. So I'm gonna let those sit for at least a week and then I'll check on them. I may let them sit for a week longer. I pulled one last over the weekend and it wasn't ready to be pulled yet at all. So they definitely need a little bit of time in the ground to dry, and then I'll pull them and then I will cure them. I want to show you my onions because they are huge. They are bigger than a softball now, and some of them have bolted, so I'll be using them fresh like I've told you before, but some of them are finally starting to bend and fall over. I don't know if being on camera gives these onions justice to just how big they are, but if I took this one, I don't want to pull it because it was not one that bolted, but this, if I held it in my hand, I could not quite get my hand all the way around it. It is huge, and I have so many like that all the way down. These are the sweet onions. So let's talk about the onions. So onions are ready when the tops fall. So all throughout the season, the tops are photosynthesizing. They are sending sugar and carbohydrates down to the root so that it can feed the onion bulb as it's developing. Once the onion has determined based on day length and temperature that it doesn't need to do any more of that work, then it will start to dry out and the onion top will flop over. And I've got some over here, so let's go take a look at those because I want to show you what you can do with them. All right, so these are ready to harvest. And how would I know that? Because the tops are still quite green, but it's because of the way they're laying. If you can see, they have all fallen down and they have all bent over. This main stem right here is just bent over like this. It just flops over like it's feeling discouraged. And so from here on out, this onion is going to dry and the outer skin is going to dry up, and it's going to start looking more like those onions that are on your grocery store shelves. The skin will get dry and papery. So I will be going through and harvesting a lot of these onions just week by week as they all start to fold and flop over. I'm going to be doing a separate video on alliums and how you know when alliums are ready to harvest. So I'll be talking about onions, leeks, garlic, and shallots. Those are the 4 major ones that I've grown here in the garden, and most of them are just about ready to harvest. So I want to show you how you harvest them, how you know when to harvest them, and then also what you do to cure them first so that you can store them over the long haul for several months in your house in a cool location. So we'll be talking about that in the next video, and so hopefully you'll find that interesting to you. If not for this year, then maybe for next year. I have all these marigolds. These ones are a little bit short, and then these are a little taller next to them. Let me show you this one over here because it's open a little bit more. But look how lovely that orange is. I love the two-tone, but I also really love how the stems are just red. So I like the reddish and the green together. I think that's a really pretty combination. Do y'all know what this is? This is a huge patch of cilantro that I let go to flower for the ladybugs and the pollinators and then to seed. And I don't know if I can do it justice, but there are so many ladybugs and ladybug larvae on here. I could not believe it. I was looking at it yesterday. Oh, let's go to that one over there. I think there are a lot more. Can you all see that? Just all those little dark spots in there? Those are all ladybug larvae and varying degrees of development. Just really, really cute. I wish I could get a little closer, but this lens isn't a macro lens. Also notice that some of the cilantro has already developed seeds, so I'll come through and collect some of these too. Some for me for next year, and then some to share with the seed library in Pima County. A lot of the garbanzo beans are pretty much done, and if you pick one of these pods and you cut it open, or crunch it open, not cut it open, then you'll see one single little seed in there. It really makes you appreciate how much work garbanzo beans take when you just buy them at the store by the bag. But I have planted in here while the garbanzo beans are finishing some tomatoes. So you see one there, and you've got some more over here too. At a volunteer corn. So those are starting to come up through the garbanzo beans, and so I will carefully harvest those beans when they're finished, and then I will have the tomato plants in their place. This huge patch of tomatoes needs to be staked again, I see, but I just saw, can you all see that little splash of yellow right here? This is one of my Apricot Zebra tomatoes. And I just love that variety so much, but I need to come through and tie these up again because they are starting to outpace the supports that I had them on. This bed is a really interesting combination that I've been having some fun with. So in the front, I just have some calendula. These were volunteers that I moved from other parts of the garden, and I just put them in front. And then I've also got some peppers. You get a little closer so you can see that. Some peppers right there. That bronze fennel in the back, this brown thing, I just left that there for the butterflies and things, so I may or may not let it stay. I'm just not sure yet, but I put up these little wire things, these wire supports, because I planted some pole beans here. I'm just having a little bit of fun. I planted pole beans at the base of them, and they are just winding their way up, and I was hoping that they would help to shade those peppers underneath, along with the help of some of this amaranth. This amaranth is really going crazy. We have a vulture tree, and can you see the vultures coming? So this huge, what I was told was an Aleppo pine. I am not for sure on that because I'm not up on my pines, but anyway, this pine tree has become one of their very favorites. And when we look at this pine tree after it gets a little closer to dark, there are usually a couple dozen vultures up in there, and they're kind of gross looking, but they have their purpose. The only thing I don't really like about it is that they poop all over the sidewalk and the window on that side of the house, so that's pretty gross. This stock tank garden is actually doing so well this year. I am really pleased with how everything is going. So I had shared with you that I overwintered some of my eggplants, the Patio Baby eggplants. I had carefully dug them up last fall, really late fall, and took them in the house and put them under lights and let them grow and overwinter in there. And then in the spring, after the danger of frost was past, I brought them back out and I planted them in the stock tank behind me, which I'm going to show you. And I cannot believe how much they have exploded in growth. And I have been harvesting pocketfuls of eggplants off of these plants for probably every day almost for the last couple of weeks. And they are beautiful and they're delicious and they are so perfect for a container garden. So if you are thinking that you would like to grow a few vegetables, this one is the one. It's delicious, it's beautiful, it's prolific. So it's a great way to get some nutritious eggplants without having to have a lot of space. Just look at this stock tank, just full of these eggplants. And they're just lovely. They have these beautiful purple flowers like this, just completely loaded down. But I love the way they coordinate with the purple of the leaf. I think it's just a beautiful plant. But I'm gonna flip some of these leaves over so you can see just how many eggplants are hiding underneath. One of the cool things about this eggplant is that it grows its fruits underneath, so it really stays protected. Be ready to be amazed, y'all. I'll try to do this as best I can one-handed with the camera. But if I lift this up, can you see all of the eggplants just hanging under there? And let me grab one. These are a really nice size. I haven't harvested them for 2 days, but this is about the size you want. It's just a little bit longer than an egg, but fits in the palm of your hand, and they're not too seedy if you pick them at this size. If you let them get too big, they'll get a little tough and they'll get too many seeds, but this is a really great size. I like to cut these little eggplants in half, toss them in some olive oil, throw in some garlic cloves that I've halved, put a little bit of salt on there, and just roast them in the oven until they are just slightly brown, just a little bit, so you get a little bit of that caramel flavor. And they are so delicious with pastas or just even on the side. You could probably put them on a sandwich. I don't know, like you could do anything with these eggplants. They're so flavorful. The skin is not tough at all as long as you pick them on time. And I think these are perfect for a patio garden. This potted plant area here where I have some in this stock tank but also some in the pots over here is doing really well. This one is a husky red. It's a determinate patio tomato, but it is so bulky and it's got so many big tomatoes. It's loaded down. Now these will ripen mostly at once and then this plant will be finished because it's a determinate tomato. And that's okay because I have other plans for this bed when it's finished. And then next to it, its polar opposite, is a little dwarf tomato. And can you see how tiny this is? This is about 10 inches tall. And it is completely covered in tomatoes, and it is called a red robin tomato. So this has been super prolific so far. This would be great for a flower pot garden or for a really small space. And next to it, perfect companion, is the window box basil. And this, I can assure you, tastes just as delicious as any big variety of basil, only it is probably 12 inches tall at this point because it's a little bit taller than this tomato. And it is really delicious too. So I'm really happy with those two. Let's go to the other side and look at the ones I have in the flower pots. This was a seedling that I purchased from a hardware store, and this is the Better Bush variety, and it is kind of flopping over. I need to find some sort of a support for it, but I want to show you just how big the tomatoes are on here. So here's one. It is probably almost baseball sized, and it's got several others underneath here that are of similar size. If I can look at that big cluster of tomatoes. And then on this side, it's got a similar situation going on. It's got a lot of tomatoes on it. So I'm really, really pleased with that one so far. Let's talk about this Hestia dwarf runner bean. So the plant is healthy, it's been blooming, it's got these really lovely two-toned pink and red blooms. I really like that. But so far, it has been dropping all of the blooms. As you can see here, there are no beans where the blooms were. I have not gotten a single bean pod that I've noticed that has set on here. That happens sometimes with runner beans in general. I've had scarlet runner beans that have pretty much messed around like this all summer and not really produced a whole lot until late summer and then into the fall. So this may just be, you know, behaving the same way, so I'll let you know. Bean pods tend to drop their blossoms when it's above 90 and not really set a whole lot of fruit. So we'll see how this one does. As an example of why you always plant mint in a pot instead of in the ground is right here, this mess of a situation that's happening. So I had some violas in here and I'd put some mint in here, and I actually had some thyme in here too, but I had to move the thyme out because the mint was basically smothering it. So it's a really lovely variegated mint. It's beautiful, it makes very yummy tea, but I'll definitely be keeping this mint in a pot so it doesn't take over my whole garden. All right, let's go in. This stock tank garden is not looking so neat and tidy anymore. I have my tomatillos in here, and I've shared before that they do not play well with others. They are bullies, so I always try to sequester them in their own little spot. So this is their spot this year, and I've already been getting lots of tomatillos off of them. They don't seem to mind growing in this 2-foot tall stock tank at all. So they are really tasty Toma Verdes, and they've gotten so big in the last month. And then next door to them is another round stock tank, and this has 3 different kinds of tomatoes in them. So I've got the Berries Crazy Cherry. This is going to have big clusters. You can see how the flowers are forming right here. Those will form these little clusters of teardrop shaped cherry tomatoes. These will be a very pale yellow and so sweet and yummy. I love this variety. But this monster right here, let's go to the front because this is loaded with tomatoes, but also not very well behaved. All right, I'm on the other side of the stock tank now, and you can see these tomatoes. Look at this branch. This is as tall as I am. I always give my height for reference, not because I'm bragging about being tall, but because it's really hard to know how tall people are or how big plants are on camera. So I try to give some kind of a reference. So I'm 5'9", and the stock tank is 2 feet tall, and this tomato plant is as tall as I am in the stock tank. So this is well over 3 feet, pushing 4 feet. I want you to see all of the tomatoes on this plant. So first of all, it's got all of these little immature tomatoes on it, but then if I go down here, let's venture forth into this crazy tomato. You can see there are these like Roma shaped tomatoes. These are, let's see, bigger than a cherry tomato but smaller than a salad slicer. So, but they are this kind of oblong shaped right here. This is the Juliet tomato, and I cannot wait to try this. This is the Juliet tomato. It's a hybrid tomato. This is the first year I've been growing it. It was recommended to me by someone that I follow on Instagram, and they had really high marks for this one, that it was very prolific, productive, that it didn't mind the heat at all. So far, it's living up to the productive part of its reputation, in that it's got a ton of green tomatoes. Now, the other day, I noticed that it had a red tomato, and I was so excited about it, and I picked it only to find that a mouse had eaten the lower half of it, and I didn't want to eat after a mouse. So I haven't tasted it yet, but as soon as I do, I'll let you know, and I'll definitely give you my opinion on whether or not it's a good, flavorful tomato. So this is the nasturtiums. Yes, they are still around. Instead of just filling up the whole stock tank, they've kind of parted in the middle like hair, and they have gone on either side. They are still blooming, and I have still been collecting so many seed. In fact, I'm actually really behind on it. If you can see down here, the whole ground is covered with nasturtium seeds. So one of my jobs for this week is to come and pick these up for sure. But what I'm doing while these nasturtiums are finishing, because I'm a softie and I just cannot ever seem to rip plants out when I need to, is I just went ahead and I planted in the middle here where they're parting. I planted some of these zucchinis. These are the Ostia zucchinis, good for containers. So I've got a couple of them in there, and those are coming up, and when they get big enough and they need the room, I promise I'll do the hard thing and I'll rip those out. All right, so let's move on to this next one. This one's a mess. This is one of the tubs that has the nematodes in it. I'll show you another one in a minute, but I have planted a ton of these little marigolds in here, and it's really just got some leftover stuff. I haven't done a whole lot with this tub. It has some Swiss chard that's bolting that I need to remove, and it's got some nasturtiums that are giving it their last effort that I just want seeds from because they're a variegated one. I have a thing for those, I think. Really pretty leaf, and they've got really bright orange blossoms. But really, I'm just going to be clearing this tub out and letting the marigolds do their thing for those nematodes. While we're talking about the nematodes, let's look over here. So you can see this tub is basically all marigold. I've got some tall ones, and then I've also got some really short ones in here too, and they've all been blooming. These tall ones have really pretty two-toned little blooms on them that I think are so sweet. But I'm just gonna let this be flowers this year, and this one was really affected by the nematodes. So in case you're wondering, marigolds will secrete a substance that the nematodes don't like and is not very compatible with them. So they are secreting that from their roots. So I'm gonna let this tub have a break, feed the pollinators with the flowers, and hopefully treat those nematodes naturally. Can you see this? This tells me that this tub is also a bit nutrient deficient. This oregano is not happy. It's very pale. So far the marigolds are not really affected, but I think I'll probably amend this tub too, just to make sure the marigolds stay healthy all season. I know our shed isn't done yet, y'all. We've had a few little sidetracks we've had to deal with, but we will get it done very soon. So I want to show you though this 5-foot long tub here. All of these tomatoes in here, there are 4 or 5. I think there are 4. These are the Tidy Rose tomato. They have a small petite version of a beefsteak, and they're pink. These are one of my favorites as well. This is one that I have grown on repeat for the last few years, and definitely in my top 10 as well, just like the Lizzano. They produce a ton. They're supposed to be a semi-determinate tomato, so they will pretty much produce their flush of tomatoes all at once and ripen mostly at once, but then they will continue to put on a few tomatoes here and there. So if you are not desperate for the space for something else and you want to just let them stay, you totally could. That's what I usually do. They're starting to surpass these lunchbox peppers back here that I have, but I don't know if you can see. Let me see if I can reach. This guy is getting a lot bigger. So this one will get to be about 18 inches tall, which isn't a whole lot shorter than these. So hopefully they will play nicely. I think to do over again, I would have put the peppers in the front, but hindsight's 20/20, right? There are probably 4 Lizzano tomatoes in the stock tank. It is 4 feet long. So when you're looking at that and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna have room in my container garden for these wild things, there are 4 or 5 plants in here. So even if you wanted to just do one, I think that it would go really well in like a 12-inch wide flower pot, because it would just drape over if you just wanted to do a single one. It would probably do really well in a hanging pot too, and it would just drape down, and then you could reach up and pick the fruits off of it. So I love this one. I've grown it for several years in a row, and I probably always will, because it is definitely in my top 10. But just for the sake of avoiding soil-borne diseases, I thought I would put it in this tub to keep it off the ground this year, and I'm really pleased with it. Just look how it's draping over. It just is draping down and totally filling out that tub. And can you see just how many tomatoes are on here? Just completely covered. And I've actually been getting some ripe tomatoes. Let's peek in here. Like here's one right here. They're very good. Like just a basic, sweet, tart, cherry tomato flavor, just like you would expect. And this is the classic cherry tomato. It's delicious, it's healthy, it's prolific. Definitely grow the Lizzano tomato. This bed is all Lizzano tomatoes. These are a cherry tomato. They're kind of a sprawling bush type plant. I grew them in ground in the garden last year, and they did fine. They didn't seem to mind being on the ground. We got so much rain yesterday, which is so nice, and it was a really nice steady rain over most of the afternoon and evening. We ended up getting about 2.9 inches of rain, which is really good. And normally that kind of rain would come down in just a downpour, and then it would just all run off, and then the desert wouldn't really benefit from it. This time it was a really slow drizzle over hours of time, and the ground really soaked it up, which is so nice because it was much needed. We really didn't get hardly any rain where I am over the winter time. I think we got one light shower, and that is about it. So it has been months since we got rain. The price we pay for all that rain is humidity, and if you can't tell, I am condensating right now. It is so humid out here. So I'm gonna wrap up this video. I'm Kara from So Arizona. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy gardening.